So apparently, they are referring to today as Orange Monday, not to be confused with Bloody Sunday or Manic Monday, but Orange Monday. Why? Because the markets picked up pretty much where they left off on Friday, which was over a cliff. Folks, it is insane where we find ourselves. But again, I'm not going on an I told you so tour, but I could. There is so much news to cover, and I'm so happy that you are here. Let's get into it. Welcome, dear friends, to the Danielle Moodie Show. Well, it is another Monday in America, but this one is being coined by folks on Reddit as Orange Monday. You see, last week we were supposed to experience some type of liberation. I'm not quite sure what we were being liberated from. My assumption is our 401ks, our sanity, our pensions, our will to live. But here's the thing, we pick up today where we left off on Friday, which is that the markets have not rebounded. And while I listened today to CNBC chatter and I listened to some of these business analysts offer their thoughts, right? I get called in to give my thoughts on the political news of the day. And similarly, right, folks get called in to give their thoughts on the economy and on the markets. And the funny thing is that some people are saying like, oh, we're not going to be headed towards a recession. Like, Trump's tariff war will in fact cool down. Don't worry about it. All will be well. And this may be the best time to quote unquote buy in the dip. Now, if you joined my colleague and I, Wajahat Ali, earlier today at 12 p.m. Eastern, you were hip to the breaking news where, in fact, yes, indeed, I do think that we are headed into a recession. I do not need to be an economist or a math major in order to tell you that. When you decide that you want to up the ante against China, and then China, which has a billion or so fucking people that live in this country that can basically manufacture everything on their own and then decide that you want to test them and then in return they're like, we see you and we raise you. It turns out that playing chicken with the Chinese probably not the best idea, which will result in, oh, I don't know, somewhere between 100% or over 100% increase in goods from China. And you know the joke. Everything that we have here in America is made in China or somewhere in fucking Asia and Europe. Very little is actually made inside of the United States. But I digress. Folks, before I dive fully in, if you are new here and have not subscribed to this channel, I am doing my best right now to hit 25,000 subscribers, and we are at 22.2 thousand. So if you have not subscribed to this channel and you liking the content that you're getting, please do hit subscribe right now, as well as the little bell in the corner so that you never miss an episode. And feel free, like, comment to help the algorithm fairies and get this show in as many people's feeds and on YouTube recommendations as possible. All right, let's dive in. With some actual good news is where I want to start for the day. How many of you in the chat actually participated in the Hands Off April 5th marches that took place across the country? Give me a show of hands in the chat. And for those of you watching this video later, let me know. because according to the 5051 movement, that were one of the organizers of this nationwide protest that happened on Saturday, uh, they reached 5.2 million people. 5.2 million Americans took to the streets. This is just a snapshot of what we could see across the country. And Boston, New York, Chicago, Portland, San Francisco, San Diego, Idaho, Utah, Oakland, and pretty much everywhere, people took to the streets to have their voices heard, and in particularly in red districts that Donald Trump won by double digits in 2024. The people are pissed off. And here's a little bit about what the 5051 folks said with regard to the 5.2 million people across the country. We are building a massive, visible national rejection of this crisis. And yesterday's protests are proof that the people, the majority, are taking action to stop a hostile government takeover. Because let's be clear, we do not have a functioning democracy anymore. Trump and his billionaire allies have dismantled our system of checks and balances, stacked the courts, silenced dissent, and declared themselves above the law. This is not politics as usual, they write. This is a hostile takeover by billionaires, corporations, and authoritarian enablers. They are gutting the country for parts and selling us out in the process. April 5th was our 4th National Day of Action, and it won't be our last. We are committed to building our peaceful people's movement and achieving 3.5% participation. History shows that when just 3.5% of the population engages in sustained peaceful resistance, transformative change is inevitable. Join our movement at www.5050.1 and save the date for the next National Day of Action, which will be on April 19th. This is just the beginning, and I have been saying this for quite some time, that I believed that as the weather would get nicer and as we head into deep spring and summer in these United States, that these protests were going to get bigger because the torment, the trauma that this regime is hell-bent on inflicting on all Americans is going to increase. And folks are going to get to a point where they are fed the very fuck up. And so I encourage those who have the complexion for the protection that can absolutely show up in March. This is your time. I continue to say, and I will continue to say, that my Black and brown people need to stay out of this first rounds of actions and continue with our boycotts that are online, continue with using our dollars in a very thoughtful way and disengaging and defunding, right? Companies that no longer fuck with us. But what I will continue to say is that Donald Trump and this regime are waiting for Black and brown people to join en masse so that they can roll out martial law. And so I continue to say, my white folks, right? My non-melanated peoples, I appreciate you. Do the work that we have been doing for quite some time and get out there, march, protest, get your kids, your grandkids, and continue to get it done, because it is likely that you remain physically safe in this moment and that Black and brown folks do not. And that is why I continue to say it. We can use our power and our voices in other ways. And I encourage white brothers and sisters and non-melanated peoples to be out there in mass, as was seen on April 5th, and continue to march against this regime, because I think that what 5051 is doing and what the people are doing is going to continue to grow, and I support it 3,000%. Um, so, oh God. Sometimes I think that inside of my coffee cup that I should have a cocktail, but then, I would end the show smashed, and I'd rather not do that. Plus, I don't want them to drive me to drink. Do you know what I'm saying? But when I see this picture, I mean, what else do you want to do? Right? Like what else would come? What else comes to mind? Right? It is like my eyes, and then like, please give me the strongest drink possible. So uncertainty over tariffs leads to wild swings in markets. The S&P 500 slipped into bear market territory in early trading, but climbed back fucking barely, close to where it opened by the afternoon. Trump said he would not back off his trade war, reinforcing fears of a global economic downturn, which we have seen because places like Australia, Taiwan, China, and a few others halted fucking trading because they were bleeding out on Sunday night. And that's never a good sign. Just, want to say. And when you listen to these right wingers get on TV and they're talking about, Donald Trump knows what he's doing. He's a genius and he understands like where the pressure points are and what to do. This is a man that has filed for bankruptcy 6 times. This is a man who right now owes New York City over $400 million for his fraudulent real estate dealings that were inflating, right, the square footage in his buildings in order to pump up the prices. And he was found to have done that multiple times over. And I'm sorry, where was Donald Trump's COO? Where has he been? At fucking Rikers. Okay? But this is the man that 77 million Americans wanted to gamble their futures on. And this is what their futures look like right the fuck now. I mean, it is hard to believe. Honestly, it's hard to believe that we are not 100 days into this regime when in fact I feel like we are at least 100 years in. And I've made the joke before where it's like, the 100-year war where somebody 3 months in is just like, my God, how long is this going to go on? Not knowing that it's going to be 100 years. This is how I feel. Trump on Monday issued, as I said at the top, a new ultimatum to China to rescind its retaliatory tariffs on the United States. And let's just be clear here. When we're using the word retaliatory, Donald Trump started this shit. All was well with our economy 5 months ago. Okay? Like, we fended off recession post a global health pandemic, rebounded the economy. We're adding more jobs on a monthly basis. So much so, right, that following the election, the business pages were absolutely shocked. They were not anticipating how well the economy was going to do, or actually, they were betting on Kamala Harris losing and having their buddy come in to provide them with tax breaks and deregulation. So when they say retaliatory, it's like, let's remember who started this fuck shit in the first place. The threat came as governments around the world raced to schedule phone calls and send delegations to Washington and submit proposals to lower their import taxes to escape the tariffs. Trump and his advisors have offered conflicting signals on whether the United States is willing to negotiate. My whole thing with these folks is to, I don't know. And I know that it's hard. And I genuinely do know that it's going to be painful. Figure out how to operate without the United States. Because you cannot trust Donald Trump. You can't. You cut a deal with him on a Monday, he blows up that deal on a Wednesday. If you think that Donald Trump is going to hold to any word that he gives to any one of these nation leaders, like, then you haven't been paying attention. There is nothing that Donald Trump is going to say that is going to, because mind you, just a reminder, he did the trade deal in 2019. He was president with our North American siblings, with Canada and with Mexico. The same deal that he is now ripped up. So why would you even bother scheduling a call to get this madman who has bankrupted 6 businesses, who is a known grifter and a fucking liar? Why would you even bother getting on the horn with him? You would be served better in figuring out how to negotiate with your other allies in order to lessen the blow of what the United States is doing right now. But what do I know? I'm not an economist. But here's where Europe is. Europe gears up to make its first counter move to Trump tariffs. European Union officials will vet and vote on a list of retaliatory tariffs this week while contemplating what comes next. Ursula von der Leyen, president of the EU's executive branch, said on Monday that the 27-nation bloc would be willing to employ a, quote, zero for zero approach on products, including cars, eliminating tariffs on goods if the United States did the same. EU car tariffs are currently set at 10%. But because they know who they're dealing with, at the same time, both she and the EU Trade Commissioner, Maros Sefcovic, made it clear that European officials were preparing to deploy tariffs and potentially other trade barriers to hit back at the United States if the two sides could not reach a deal. Those tariffs are set to begin within days. Again, I say, not an economist, not a financial advisor, not even a good math student. But what I will say that I know to be true is that Trump is not to be trusted. He's not to be trusted to take his word on anything. He shouldn't have been entrusted with our economic well-being, because if Americans had been smart, which I know, I'd like to say that a majority of us were, folks, but I don't really think so. But if Americans had been smart and had said no to the reality TV show host, had said, no, we don't want your bullshit, had done what, the South Koreans were able to boot out their president, Yoon, who decided that he was going to institute martial law illegally, and now he's gone. The Brazilians were able to put Bolsonaro on trial for what? Trying to overturn the election. Marine Le Pen has been put in jail and barred from political office for the next 5 years in France for her fuckery. And yet, the person whom they've all modeled themselves off of, Donald Trump in America, is running the country and the world's economies into the ground. Bravo. Which brings me to this motherfucker right here. For those of you who don't know this face, this is Bill Ackman. Bill Ackman, billionaire hedge fund guy, has spent a uncomfortable amount of time complaining on X, which is not where you would find me if I was a billionaire. Actually, as a matter of fact, if I were a billionaire, you would not find me. Period. But somehow, sitting on top of piles of fucking cash doesn't ever, right, actually buy happiness. No, instead, these motherfuckers These billionaires want to make everybody as miserable as they are. So Bill finds himself going on one of his Twitter rage fests where he is talking about what economic nuclear winter for Trump's tariffs, because he did not believe that Donald Trump would go so far as to what? Hurt little old him and all his billions of dollars that he has wrapped up in hedge funds and in the market. No, no. He was good with Donald Trump hurting everybody that he doesn't like, right? But now all of a sudden, the chicken has come home to roost and he's screaming from the rooftops, nuclear winter, economic nuclear winter. Just a reminder, he endorsed Trump last summer, shortly after the assassination attempt, against then former president at the presidential campaign rally. In October, he made a lengthy case on social media for Trump as the better candidate. And he later said he hoped Trump's victory would lead to the implosion of the Democratic Party. I think he actually just meant the implosion of democracy, but alas. What else has this MFer been up to? Raging Bill Ackman's fight against Harvard has made him the public face of a billionaire class anxious. It no longer rules the world. You see, this is why he's been going on all of these rage fests. This is why he went after and had the first Black president of Harvard fired. A bully, the billionaire who led calls for Claudine Gay's Harvard exit, U.S. hedge fund manager Bill Ackman, posts 4,000-word screed decrying racism against white people after Gay's departure. This is the man who has fully funded the anti-woke brigade, who has gone after diversity, equity, and inclusion, who wants the removal of anyone who is not white and a man from from textbooks, all because, and get this, because this is where there are connections with all of these white billionaire men. So listen, this is what I find out today. Just a little research. Bill Ackman majored in social studies, went to Harvard, and found his right-wing mentor there. And, has created this very distorted view on capitalism and titans of industry X, Y, and Z. Well, what happens is Ackman ends up sending his daughter to Harvard, who also majors in social studies, except she discovers a different view than her daddy. She starts questioning capitalism and writes her thesis on what? Marxism. Now terrified that his daughter has been what? Indoctrinated. He decides to take on a huge crusade against liberal institutions because he said, my daughter couldn't possibly be the only one that has gone away to school. And now, anytime I bring up anything around the dinner table, this is literally a quote. This was an article in New York Magazine. She goes off, right, about capitalism and all of its harms. Folks, this is one of the reasons why Elon Musk is a fucking transphobe. Because Elon Musk has a trans daughter who we talked about because She had a beautiful cover on Teen Vogue talking about, her platform and against her father, right? Who hates trans people because they what? Indoctrinated his daughter. Do you see, like, and they're not the only ones. They send their kids away, right, to school. Their kids, because you're in school and the whole purpose of sending them to school is to develop critical thinking that may or may not align with your thinking. But instead of figuring out their shit in, let's say, I don't know, family therapy, they're taking it out on the rest of us. And because they don't like the way their kids think now or how their kids show up now their entire crusade is to do away with what? Wokeism. Is to do away with any type of critical thinking, because if not for critical thinking, then their children would continue to think like them. Go to therapy. Deal with different opinions. It's not that big a fucking deal. But no, by all means, shut down public education. Shut down universities. Do away with thinking altogether because you can't have a debate with your own child over dinner. The fragility. The fragility, folks, is just wild. Moving on in other news, because I think that it's important to, have other news. Get this shit. When I saw this headline, I was like, oh, really? Pause for shock. Republican senator floats using violence against journalists who report, quote, fake news. Mark Wayne, that's his actual long first name because his parents clearly named him after a cowboy. Mark Wayne Mullen recounted that a reporter fatally shot a former congressman in 1890. Boy, do they love this century. Adding, there might be less fake news if we could still handle our differences that way. Quote, there's a lot we can say about reporters of the store and of the stories they write, but I bet they would write a lot less false stories, as Trump says, fake news, if we could still handle our differences that way. After the Oklahoman published a story about his comments, Mullen criticized the publication on X and indicated he had been joking. No, the only joke here, sir, is that you are a member of Congress. Speaks volumes about the people inside of Oklahoma, but thank you to the Oklahoman for calling out his bullshit and actually not being afraid of, oh, I don't know, him shooting up the place, because God forbid you have conversation. Like, do you see what they have done? Is shut down dissent by economic terrorism, taking away millions of dollars from universities and colleges, right? To shut down dissent, disappear fucking students from the street, from their homes, for daring to exercise the rights afforded to people in this country under our Constitution, the right to assemble, the right to protest, the right to free speech. And just, kill them. And just so you think, if you think that I am like bananas in my thoughts here,
El Salvador, the president there said he would be willing to take American citizens in the federal prison population. Is that one of the ideas you're going to be discussing?
Well, I love that. If we could take some of our 20-time wise guys that push people into subways and that hit people over the back of the head and that purposely run people over in cars. If he would take them, I'd be honored to give them. I don't know what the law says on that, but I can't imagine the law would say anything different. If they can house these horrible criminals for a lot less money than it costs us, I'm all for it. But I'd only do according to the law. But I have suggested that, why should it stop just at people that cross the border illegally? We have some horrible criminals, American grown and born. And if we have somebody that bops an old woman over the head, if we have somebody that is in jail 20 times and goes back and shoots people all over the place and then has a bad judge or a bad prosecutor that do nothing about them, all they worry about is politics, they don't worry about that. I think if we could get El Salvador or somebody to take them, I'd be very happy with it, but I have to see what the law says. Okay.
I have to see what the law says. The law says that's illegal. Not a lawyer or constitutional lawyer, but sending American citizens to an El Salvadorian or any type of foreign gulag because they robbed somebody or because, you've been screaming, lock her up for a decade and you think that they are the enemy and you don't like them is pretty fucking illegal, This should shock no one. We said they start with the low-hanging fruit. They start with the undocumented. They start with those that are legal residents, but you don't like what they're saying, and you pull out laws from the 1700s or the 1800s to justify your hatred in the 21st century. These are for-profit prisons. He paid the El Salvadorian grifter, aka the president there, $6 million. $6 million of our dollars, because we know he ain't using his fucking money, to house what 60 Minutes revealed over the weekend of the 258 men that were picked up and this administration referred to as terrorists and without due process sent them to an El Salvadorian prison. Well, in the research that 60 Minutes did, they found that 75% of them had no record at all. This is who Donald Trump is referring to as terrorists. Then with 22% who did have a record, it was for nonviolent offenses. A judge has ruled, right, this week, that at least one of these men who has legal residence or what have you to be fucking released. Now, the Trump administration is going all the way up to the Supreme Court and saying, no backsies. You see, Donald Trump knows that he's scooping up innocent people, non-criminals that just happen to have the wrong complexion, that just happen to have accents, that just happen to be in the right place at the very wrong time. When his armed thugs without uniforms, in mass, in unmarked cars, are let loose on communities to terrorize them. If you watched what is up now, Democracy-ish, from 12 p.m. today, I read the letter of a principal in New York who has 3 third graders, 9 and 10-year-olds, that ICE picked up, handcuffed, and threw into a van, and they are now in a detention center some fucking where with adults. Third graders. He is pleading, this principal is pleading for the release of these children. The actions that are being taken against adults are traumatizing on their own. Can you imagine a child? It is inhumane. It is sick. It is twisted. It is fucking vile. And I'd love to say, oh, this is not the America that I know, but I'm Black. And I know all too well what this country has done to non-white people. Whether it is the indigenous Native American population who had their children ripped away from them, put into torture schools that they like to call boarding schools, that we would later find out centuries, decades later, that they sexually abused, physically abused, and killed. We know what has happened over the course of Americans' blood-soaked history of anti-Blackness and terrorism. If you have not watched my series on the Black Panther Party, it is up now on my channel, just to give you a little bit of an insight. And that's recent history. That's not like the lynchings that took place of pregnant women who had their babies cut out of their bodies and stomped on. That's American history. So for folks that like to get caught up in places and spaces where you say this is not who we are, I want to thank one of my dear friends, Dr. Christina Greer, who has a piece up right now at the New York Times entitled "Black Americans Are Not Surprised." If you've ever listened to my former podcast, Woke AF Daily, or The New Abnormal, then you have heard Dr. Greer on my shows. She wrote this, quote, "How can this be happening in America?" these people ask. "This is not the country I know, the country of rights and laws and due process." She goes on to write this, "Needless to say, these people are almost all white and liberal and are not used to feeling this fear of arbitrary, brutal state authority. But this moment, the one that was explicitly promised by Project 2025 and Donald Trump when he was a candidate, looks a lot like what my grandmother experienced every day for much of her life. It is frightening and disappointing, but not surprising if one knows anything about the Black experience in America, and not the sanitized just so version of the Black experience in which America skips from slavery, Harriet Tubman, and Frederick Douglass to civil rights, Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks, and somehow ends with a post-racial America and Barack Obama. This is why there are so many people, largely white people, who are shocked in this moment. Because your history, American history, our collective history, has been kept from you, so that you could continue living inside of this Disneyland sanitized version of America, where we are this beacon of the hill. We are this emblem, this example of democracy, when in fact, the very people who built this country, indigenous people, Black enslaved people, have never experienced the full fruits of the labor that they toiled for free. while being beaten, raped, mutilated, robbed of dignity. And when they were, quote unquote, emancipated, we're still not even offered so much as the 40 acres and a mule that they asked for, and to be left the fuck alone to build their lives and communities. No, because even in the separate but equal Jim Crow America, when Black towns and businesses and schools were absolutely thriving, white America couldn't stand it and burned those places to the fucking ground. So every time that I hear from my own Black people in my community say, why don't we build and do our own? We have over centuries, and over centuries have been met with white domestic terrorism at every goddamn turn. But somehow, we're still here, not only surviving, but thriving. And so, when you find yourselves asking, why aren't the Black women marching? Why aren't the Black people marching in mass? It's because we're fucking done. Because we warned you. We yelled out into a void. Our protest was marching to the polls to elect a smart, capable, accomplished Black and Asian woman as president of the United States. But America's racism and misogyny would not allow that to happen. You have to understand that Black people in America have only experienced democracy-ish for roughly 70 years. No reparations, no deep education like what has been done in Germany since World War II to educate the German people very clearly about what Hitler did so as not to repeat it. There's been no deep education of white America about who white America has been and who parts of white America continue to be. No, America has buried that history, so much so that people are now shocked and taken aback. This is America. Donald Trump is representative of the worst of America. Not America's underbelly or undergird, but just what happens when you lift the mask and you choose to see the truth. This is a country that interned American citizens. This is a country that set up the blueprint for South African apartheid and Israeli oppression of the Palestinian people. They all used America as their blueprint. The Nazis used America as their blueprint. So before you find yourself thinking even for a moment that this is not who we are, understand that this is who we have always been. And Black people have been trying to warn you, to show you yourselves. But instead of recognizing that we exist from a place of abundance, where there is more than enough in this land of plenty for everyone, white America decided instead to burn it to the fucking ground and elect Donald Trump this second time around. So that is why we find ourselves here. It is because when you deny history, when you deny truth, you will fall for the used car salesman fucking grifter. And you will continue to repeat the worst of your history over and over and over again until you decide to open up your eyes. So I encourage everyone that is out in the streets marching to also utilize your other powers and tools of educating yourself about all the things you've been told to believe about America. Because you see, we are not ever going to be able to build the true multiracial democracy that this country can be if we are not to truly understand and reveal the truth about America, because we will consistently be building upon a fucking lie. So while there are still books, while there are still libraries, while we're still able to use our devices to access information, I encourage you, as this administration is hell bent on their blackout and removing Harriet Tubman from the National Park Services and removing any mention of the Underground Railroad and removing the excellence of women in NASA and in the military. While they're busy scrubbing America's history and whitewashing it, educate yourselves and educate everyone around you. Because in this moment, critical thinking is part of the revolution. Not only part of it, but the foundation. That is it for me today, dear friends, on the Danielle Moodie Show. If you, again, have not subscribed to this channel and you are liking everything that you hear and see, I encourage you to hit subscribe. And as soon as this video goes up, share it with your friends, your family, your colleagues. And do remember to like, comment, and subscribe, because that is how this show, this channel gets into YouTube recommendations and gets into the feed. And we continue to grow here every single day and every single week. Damnation, I thank you so much for the super stickers and super thanks. As you know, this is independent media, and I survive basically on your donations and on your kindness. And again, also, if you are a person that loves Substack, I am over there as well, the Damn Digest, putting up fantastic content and videos and articles. I have one up that is up now, which is on tariffs, a video, and then also an article called A Speckle of Pepper in a Sea of Salt, all about Brown versus the Board of Education. So I encourage you to head over there. And if you are somebody that is interested in being a monthly paid subscriber, if you're looking to do more than just send a super sticker or a super thanks, you can support me over there as well. As always, dear friends, power to the people and to all the people power. Get woke, stay sane, which is so hard. And in these extraordinarily dangerous times, dear friends, do stay safe. I will be back here tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern. See you then. Be well.